Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, this is Mary Crean, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life podcast. I'm super excited to be here. Laura, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Mary. Thanks so much for asking. Yeah, it's coming off of a wonderful weekend, spent a lot of time with family, so excited for today's conversation.
And Joseph, how about yourself?
Peachy, good to see you running the show today, Mary. Excited for today's guest.
Well, thank you. Hopefully we can have smooth sailing. And Joseph, while you're at it, we'd love for you to introduce our guest.
Will do. I'd like to introduce Linda Bucher, who is a transformational speaker, a master certified life coach, a podcaster, an author, and an MBA. She's on a mission to inspire and impact millions of people to know their worth, share their gifts, and make a splash, deliberately creating big, beautiful ripples in the world. Linda, welcome to Prime Life. Please tell us a little bit more of this.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny when you read all that stuff off. It's obviously I'm an and kind of person. So this and that and this and that. And it's funny sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, oh, I achieve much, you know. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here and share a little bit of my story and some of the insights that I have discovered through my own experiences and then also through my training as a master certified life coach.
Why don't you start by telling us your story?
Okay. Like, all right, which one? Where to start? No, well, here's what I'll talk about. So, after about 45 years of living life like a chameleon, which many of us do, I was unfulfilled and kind of miserable, and I didn't know what the problem was. I didn't know if it was me. I didn't know if it was my marriage. I didn't know if it was my career. I didn't know. It was some kind of mix of all of it. And I had been like climbing the corporate ladder. I did that for a good 25 years. And I'm climbing and climbing and climbing. And then one day I realized, oh my gosh, this ladder is leaning against the wrong building. This is not the building I want to be on the roof of, not at all. And so I was 45 years old when I entered my second act, I guess you could call it. I had spent a lot of years doing a lot of different things in my career from, I was a computer programmer. I was a marketer. I was a finance, merger acquisition financial analyst. I was doing some sales. Like I kind of ran the whole gamut. And so then, like I said, when I was 45 years old, I was like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. This is not right for me. And about 3 years previous to that, on a beautiful May morning, I woke up, and I had my three kids were home with me. I adopted my children. They were like 3, 5, and 7. And my husband passed away in his sleep, and he was only 44 years old. So that threw more wrench into the monkey wrench of life. And, what I really had to do was discover who I was and what I wanted out of life. So that's kind of like the short version. And I've got probably 4 insights to share that have happened because of that catalyst and then since then.
So Linda,
Thank
you also remind me a little bit of myself, not all of the pieces that you mentioned, but doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then sometimes thinking, oh, wait a minute, something's not quite right. So that what you have achieved, what you've gone through, requires a lot of courage. Can you share with our audience how you took the first bite out of that big elephant, because that just overwhelmed me, like what you said, like not in a bad way, but like I was overwhelmed for you. So can you just share a little bit about how you approached such an amazing life change?
Okay, so I want to use a metaphor that I share with people a lot because I think everybody can relate to this metaphor. So I say most of us are living on the island of playing it safe. On that island, some of us are island dwellers, some of us are dock seekers, and some of us are adventurers. So I was an island dweller till I was about 35 years old. Now, let me tell you a little about an island dweller. So island dwellers, we want change, right? But maybe we don't believe it's possible, or we know it's possible, but we're just not ready. And that's okay, right? Normally what's happening for island dwellers is they're kind of sitting in this campground right in the middle of the island, hoping and waiting for something or someone to change. So they're taking little or no action. They're riding it out, right? I hung out there for most of my life. And even when I knew something had to change, I still hung out there for about 10 more years. So that was crazy. And the reason it took me 10 years, and this is relatable for most people, is that I was resisting the change. I wanted it to be easy. I wasn't ready to go within. I'm like, oh, I'll look in the want ads. I'll read the what color's your parachute. I'll go for career counseling, right? Because I didn't recognize, because I wasn't ready to go within, that's the only place that the answers are. And I wasn't at the time uncomfortable enough to justify the perceived risk of making the change. So what happened over that 10 years is every day my subconscious weighed the pain of staying where I was against my fear of the unknown, right? And decided, oh, it's not worth the risk, not worth the risk, not worth the risk. Until what happened is I had physical manifestations of going in the wrong direction. And this happens. So when you are absolutely in the wrong lane of life, your body, you'll get these little nudges, but if you don't listen, then your body gets really noisy about it. So I was in a lot of pain. I was not showing up at work on time. At some point, and this is what happened. There's a quote by Anais Nin, and it says, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than a risk it took to blossom." So that's what happened to me. That was the catalyst. So I put another way, we stay island dwellers until some internal switch flips when we're like, that's it. I can't, I'm all done. And I do remember saying out loud, I remember where I was in the bedroom of my old house. And I said out loud to no one, because I was the only one home, like, I don't know what life I'm meant to be living, but it's not this one. And that's what happened at that moment, is I flipped an internal switch and I set a very powerful intention to make a different life. And so the way I found the courage was by looking back. And this is really cool because everybody can do this. You can look back and you can look at just how far you've come, all the mountains that you've scaled. Like you might be on a mountain right now, and I know I'm mixing metaphors. I do it all the time. You might be on this mountain right now with tenuous handholds and footholds, and you look up and you go, oh my God, I have so far to go. And you look down, they're like, oh, don't look down, don't look down. And there's no way you're turning your head and looking behind you because you're going to fall off. But if on your rock climbing helmet, you had one of those little tiny mirrors that you could look behind you, you would see a beautiful mountain range behind you of all the mountains you've already scaled. And one of the things I discovered about myself is that all that hardship that I had been through in life, and there's a big long story of hardship, of bullying, of infertility, of sudden widow and single motherhood and more, it didn't make me stronger. It showed me just how strong I am. So my big insight at that point was, holy crap, what if I'm the one I had been waiting for, sitting at that campfire hoping and waiting all this time? What if it was me, right? So that was a huge insight. That was kind of the beginning of everything.
That's an interesting point, because usually people think they're waiting for somebody else, but it's the realization that the else is you, and that you are here and in that moment. So I think that's a powerful thing for people to think about. I guess my first question for you would be, since you were able to make that realization for yourself and understanding that everyone's journey and climb up their mountain is different, when people come to you, how do you help them realize where they are in their journey and what either lays ahead or is what's present for them at the moment?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years. But we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. NASA insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Coverite is the first digital concierge health insurance platform focused on Medicare. Their mission is to make Medicare more transparent and accessible for America's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. By simplifying a traditionally confusing and complex decision, Coverite delivers a simple, seamless, and hassle-free plan selection and enrollment experience. Try the Coverite platform and see for yourself why they've been referred to as the TurboTax for Medicare. Visit coverite.com/podcast to learn more.
Moment.
Okay, that's an excellent question. So I didn't recognize initially when I became a life coach that I would be discovering a framework that really works all the time. And it probably took me about 8 years to realize, oh my gosh, whenever I do this, it always works. Now, coaching is not a linear journey by any means. People aren't ready to start at the beginning ever. So they want to start where it's kind of easiest, but then something comes up, right? So, but where it all starts is in order to know that you are the one you've been waiting for, to know it, know it, right? You've got to know your worth. Now, I don't mean, believe you're worthy, right? In a cerebral way. I mean, at a cellular level. And this is the thing that people don't know. And it's because we've discovered or we've decided what our worth was when we were children with a child's brain based on how our parents showed up in our world and what we made it mean whenever they praised us, we made it mean, oh, we're lovable. And whenever they reprimanded us, which happens very often for children because they're always doing stuff, because they have children's brains, right? Whenever they're reprimanded, they're believing I'm unlovable. So I don't regress my clients back by any means. I leave that to the therapist. And I believe that I don't care how you got to where you got. I mean, not that I don't care, but you can tell me once because they've got to move forward from here. So, but I do help them to understand that their perception of their worth was created in a child's brain when they saw their parents as these infallible beings instead of just everyday people who are doing the best they can, and life doesn't come with an instruction book, right? And they've got their own fears and insecurities. So once they logically know that, then we can really work on repairing their sense of worth. So the most fundamental thing that I do with my clients, and I do a lot more stuff, on this journey, but the most fundamental thing is to help them to know at a cellular level, to know their worth, because then they can liberate themselves. They can liberate themselves from all the other beliefs that they've been holding on to that are based on not believing you're good enough. So it liberates them from saying yes when they really mean no. It liberates them from being people pleasers. It liberates them from staying in a job that doesn't serve them. It liberates them from trying to get what they need from other people, because now they can recognize, oh, I've got to give myself, it's my responsibility to give myself everything I need. right? So they're taking the weight and the responsibility off other people, which liberates other people. It just keeps going and going. So you can show up your best self when you know your worth and when you liberate yourself. And that's the very beginning of it.
Linda, when you were talking about your journey, you said I think you said you were 45 and you were looking for some easy change, right? Change is never easy, but I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I think it gets harder as you get older, right? Because people get stuck in their ways. How would you help someone who's, let's just say, older, make those changes, right? Because they've been doing the same thing for 50 plus years, maybe. Like what does that process look like, and how can you help?
Right. So, okay. So when people are ready for change, that usually means they're a doc seeker. So that's pretty good, right? So now they've gotten up out of their little, circle tent thing, and they're like, wait, I got to get off this island. I'm going to go look for this doc, right? So they finally feel empowered because they're taking responsibility for their own desires. So that's really who we're talking about. So usually what doc seekers are doing is they're collecting information by themselves. They're like, I'm smart. I can figure this out. I'm not going to hire a life coach. But they are investing their time to learn how to solve their own challenges. Okay. So what happens when I'm helping someone who's a doc seeker, I'm helping them through things like podcasts. I actually did a couple of master classes that were about second act, right? Like, are you ready for a career change? Because you're not ready for the rocking chair, but you're all done doing this thing that you've been doing for the last 30 years that you've finally discovered that you're like, wait, well, my ladder might be leaning against the wrong building, right? So then I prepare them to understand what the change cycle is like. And the change cycle is something I learned during my coach training through Martha Beck Inc. And when people understand the cycle of change, when you understand that it's predictable, like that takes so much fear out of it, because everybody's afraid of change. It's fear. They fear it. But change actually has a predictable cycle. And we've been through it, each of us, many times, whenever we have a big life change. So like adolescence is one big, giant life change. Going off to college where you're on this liminal place, like, I'm not a kid, but I'm certainly not an adult. Not all those adults don't look like they're having any fun at all. What am I headed into? Full steam ahead that I didn't choose just because I'm growing up, right? When you graduate college, or like I have 2 children in the military, right? Getting out of the military. This is a big life change. What am I going to do now? And when you get married, when you have a breakup, when you move to a new city or move to a new home, whenever you shift a job from one job to another, when you have children, if you get divorced, if your spouse suddenly passes away in his sleep, right? Big, big changes. There's so many of them. We've been through them many times, and they have 4 phases. And when you know what phase you're in, which basically is my job to know, because every client that comes to me, I need to know where they are, because I have different tools that I use depending on what phase they're in. So if they're in this death and rebirth beginning phase, this is a phase where we don't make any big moves at all. This is a phase where my job is to help them feel safe and to grieve clean pain and to disbelieve with my coaching tools about beliefs, the dirty pain. So I need to help them understand the difference between clean and dirty pain, how to grieve the clean pain in a way that will not drown them, because that's why people don't grieve, because they're too afraid to drown. They're like, I got stuff to do. I can't drown in my own grief, right? And how to disbelieve the clean pain. So that's the very beginning.
What's an example of clean or dirty pain?
Oh, okay. So clean pain is irrefutably true. So when my husband passed away, if my brain was saying, you're never going to hold his hand again, and I start crying, that's irrefutably true. I cannot hold his hand again. But then when my brain says, now I have to raise these children alone, that's not irrefutably true. But it feels true, so I'm still crying, and I'm trying to grieve it. But that can never be healed because it's a thought. It's not a truth. That's the difference. Okay. So we need to first understand if the thing that's causing the emotion, and this goes for anything, it doesn't have to be, like a horrible tragedy like that. But even if you moved to a new city, I'm all alone, right? That's another, you might think it in that case, right? So it might not be true just because you haven't met anybody yet doesn't mean you're all alone. We've still got support. And so what we have to do is help our brain to find proof of the opposite. And that's how we can remove dirty pain. That's one of the ways our coach does it. So, and then as we move through this change cycle, the second phase is much more fun because it's when we get to be discovering ourselves. The first thing we discover is our wardrobe is like, who is this person? Those clothes, I don't like those clothes anymore. Then we're painting our house. We might be changing our hair. Like there's a change happening and we don't know what it is. And what it is, it's the new identity that we're discovering, because whenever we go through a change, we have a shift in identity every single time. So if you're retiring from the job you've been doing for 30 years, right? You know, like my dad, he owned a metal stamping plant that he bought when he was about 40 some years old. And then when he retired, he went from like big shot CEO business owner to golfing retired guy. Right? That's like a whole different identity. He had to take some time to get cool with that. Right. So now he doesn't have, 60 employees looking up to him. He doesn't it's a different thing. So we've got to discover where we are in the change cycle when we go through big changes like this, recognize that it's predictable. And what happens at the end of the second phase is we get really clear on exactly who we are and what we're going to be doing next. So that's really cool. Then the third phase is spent in trial and error, trying to do this thing that you made a plan for that's not working nearly according to plan, like you totally thought it was going to. So it's got its own difficulties. And then the fourth phase is when you finally get there and you're like, oh, I get this now. And if you can think of being in a relationship where or having children, you're like, oh my God. And then finally you get to the place like, okay, I know what we're doing. All backpacks need to be lined up. All this needs to be, that. So you're no longer in a tizzy. You're not in square three anymore. Now you can take your foot off the gas, but you need to recognize that at a given moment, it can all go, big change again.
That's a lot to take in, Linda.
I know.
I love everything you said. I love how you did chunk it out in phases. And I think that you're right when you said these things are predictable. And so I love that. So coincidentally, I had my oldest and dearest friend come visit with us on Friday evening. And she works for a very large company and she's in the HR kind of position. And so she gave us some news that she's going to be shifting gears and she has the option to take a project on that's very much something she wants to do, but it has an end date. And so that she's thinking of retiring in the next 2 years, whatever. She's kind of, and she was very excited. And she said, and then I want to take 6 months to just think about what I really want to do. And so we had a conversation, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of the things that you shared, I'm sure that she'll want to read about that. And because, this is going to be a life change. And I know that she's getting ready for it. And she did say at one point, I'm a little afraid. So, because she's been working since she was 16 and she's had a very, very successful career. So that all said, someone comes to you, you help them figure out where they are in the phases. So what are some sort of somewhat simple exercises that you do with them to get them kind of feeling comfortable, feeling safe, and not becoming overwhelmed?
Okay, so feeling comfortable and feeling safe, one of the best things to do is to really, it's part of a bigger thing where I'm helping a client discover what's next. I call it Find Your Wow, or I've had lots of names for it over the years. But it's what's next? How do I know what's next, right? And it is very scary. So believe it or not, one of the biggest ways to find that answer is by going backwards. So I help them reconnect with who they truly are outside of the roles and responsibilities. They know the answer to that. That's not scary, right? They're like, wait a minute, who am I? Right? So, when do you feel the most you? When do you lose time? I have a whole list of questions that I might ask. So I'm really helping them connect with themselves. The second thing I'll do is I'll ask them questions about, I'll say, give me the names of 5 people who you love to hang out with. It just feels like super good to hang out with. And then I'll ask them, give me 3 qualities of why do you love to hang out with each one of these people. So they give me 3 qualities. Oh, this person's super fun. This person always bets on herself. This, this guy is, whatever. So they're giving me reasons, character traits, basically. And then, I always ask for each character trait, how do you also have that character trait? So I'm helping them to discover themselves through others in this stage, this part here. Because I say, you spot it, you got it. You recognize it because it's within you. So this is, part of the journey that we're taking. So when you're going within, it doesn't have to be as scary because some of it is really kind of fun. Some of it, and you're really learning about everything. Then we're discovering kind of like making a Venn diagram of what you love and what you're good at, because they intersect somewhere, but they certainly don't totally overlap. Like, I love to sing, but I'm not a really good singer. So we'll be looking at that. And then another thing I might have them do is go back through all the jobs they've ever had and pluck out only what they loved. I don't care what you hate. I only want to know, what did you love about that job? And if the thing you loved the most was, talking to your friend Jim at the water cooler, then let's explore that. Because why you love something, when we dive deeper, has so many clues. I remember I was actually given a talk to a high school, and it was kind of a find your wow, because if high schoolers could do this before they start making the wrong turn, spend the next 30 years going in the wrong direction, it would be a beautiful thing. And I asked, someone to volunteer what they love to do. And some boy spoke up. He was probably about 16. He said, I love to ski. And I said, I love to ski. Tell me why you love to ski. And he said, I want to conquer the mountain. I want to see how fast I can go. I want to beat my friends. So it was like competitive. It was all competitive, inner competition and, conquer, right? And I'm like, well, I love to ski, but do you want to know why I love to ski? I love to ski because I love to be outside with nature. I want to commune with the mountain. I want to take my time and feel that snow under my feet. I want to breathe in the smells. I ski for a whole different reason. I don't want to go fast. Matter of fact, I'm always singing Norwegian Wood in my head because that's my skiing rhythm. So, I'm finding a rhythm. And so the answer when someone says, I love to do this, that's not where the answer lies of who am I and what's next. The answer lies in the next question. Tell me why. So this is how we discover ourselves. This is the not scary part of this journey. And then, of course, as a coach, I'm helping them every time the scary monsters pop up. But what if, right? Then, I've got coaching tools to coach them through that belief system. And beliefs are like houses of cards. Once you knock down a few, the rest all fall. So it really helps people then to move through from disbelief to belief, not only that it's possible, but that, I can do this. So because I can do this comes when, like the bird, I can't remember who said this, so I don't know who I'm quoting exactly, but when the bird goes out on the limb, not because it trusts that the limb won't break, but because it trusts its wings to fly. And when I looked back at 45, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, I graduated college with a piece of crap car, no job. I was like, and look what I've done. Look how far I've come. Look how much I've learned. Look what I've amassed. Look what I have. I have a home. I have a family. I have an actual car that I own, things like that. And I'm like, I was younger and stupider. I'm older and smarter. I could do that again and more. And that's how I trusted my wings to fly. That's what people can do.
I love that. So for our listeners who are interested in learning more about this journey, like what happens when someone comes to you? Talk to a little bit about that process so that way they can, get their mind around, the exciting things that you're saying. They want to show up for themselves. They want to define who they are. They want to know their next journey. They want your help to get there. What does that relationship look like?
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Okay. So when I'm working with someone, I love to work in a 3 or 4 month chunk. I graduate most of my clients in that amount of time. If we're working weekly, it takes twice as long if we're working every other week. I don't like to spread it out more than that because life gets in the way and they're not doing their homework, and I do give them some homework. And what I'm doing is I'm helping them to know their worth. I'm helping them to liberate themselves. And that's because they are the one they've been waiting for. Then during that time, I'm also helping them to expand consciously, right? To say, I'm more, and I want to know more, be more, do more, right? And to own the power that they have. That's a beautiful thing because they're getting to know themselves. And the reason I help them do that is because they didn't come this far to get only this far. Then I'm helping them to connect with those gifts. Because remember, I was saying that I help people to make a splash, to use their gifts to make a splash in the world, right? So everybody has unique gifts, and you are meant to share these with the world. So you've got to find your purpose, and then you've got to align your focus and your energy and your direction and your gifts all with that purpose. So that's what we're doing. We're gathering information and we're doing that. And so we're really getting a lot of clarity. And then they'll be able to have everything they need to know themselves, know what's next, discover exactly how they can make big, beautiful ripples in the world. So I usually start with, I have just like a complimentary 20-minute clarity call, because what's in the way? That's what everybody wants to know, like what's in the way. And so I kind of listen in here and say, okay, here's where you are on this whole journey. You've already got this and that, but these other areas are places where I think we could help. The next thing we do is like an alignment/mapping session. This is where you make the whole map. It's just 90 minutes long. It's just a single session that people can do, and they don't have to go further with me after that if they don't want to. But what we do is we look at the whole big picture, where you are, where you want to be. We start to flesh that out. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. I know how to flesh that out. And then we're discovering what the path is and what all the obstacles are that are in the way. Now people have a picture like, oh, now I see. Here's the before. Here's the after. Here's what it's going to take. Here's what I'm going to have to get through. Now they can make a value-based decision as to whether they want to move forward with coaching and actually go for it, which makes them an adventurer. An adventurer is like, yeah, I've been looking for this doc by myself and I could keep doing it for another 10 years, but I am impatient and I want the answer now. I'm going to call Linda. So that's what they do.
So Linda, I know we're getting towards the end of this conversation. I just want to go back to making a splash and tie an earlier question. You ever too old to make a splash?
You are never too old to make a splash. Never too old to make a splash. And when I talk about a splash that ripples positively in the world, making a difference and leaving a legacy of positive change, rippling, I mean, yes, there are people like Oprah, they're rippling all through the planet. But each one of us can ripple in our own family at the very least, maybe in our church or synagogue or community, right? Or in maybe a not-for-profit that we volunteer at, right? We all are making ripples. Everything we do ripples. It affects other people. And when we are deliberate in doing the work inside ourselves to become the very best version of ourselves, then our ripples not only ripple positively in our actions and what we do, but this example, this legacy, right, that we leave to our children, and they see us do it, then they're like, oh, I see how you do it. And then if any of you were going through this process that I take people through, and they're totally aligned with who they are and their gifts and their purpose, right? Can you imagine what the world would be like if everybody felt aligned with their purpose and were just like being their best selves, showing up for, because our relatives, our friends, our families, they deserve the best of us. They really do. And if everybody were just, healing from these wounds, the old wounds, getting rid of these mental and emotional obstacles that are in our way, like what a beautiful world. And this is the bigger why, the why that's bigger than the why I do what I do, right? Because I had to discover my why. which is to help people to make a splash. But why? Why is my why so important? What's the bigger why? The why that's bigger than me. And that is because it's a way to help one person at a time, because the ripples are big. So to help heal the world, that's how we do it, by healing each human and aligning with our gifts and giving in service of our communities, our families, and who knows how big we're supposed to be. So we are never too old. There are plenty of examples of people who haven't started doing anything until their second act, in their 60s, right? So it's a beautiful thing. I started becoming a life coach at 45, but I'm 59 now, and I just this year got clarity. I'm like, oh, this is a really big why that I'm a part of. Okay, so now at 59, I am starting to do this really big thing. And you read it, Joseph, at the beginning. I'm on a mission to inspire millions. I said millions. I dared to say millions of people to make a splash that, that ripples positively, makes a difference, and leaves this legacy of positive change.
That's beautiful, Linda. And I know we're getting to the end of our conversation today, and you've kind of answered a little bit, but I'm still going to pat it over to Laura to ask her final question. And go ahead, Laura.
Sure. So we love this question here on the show because we learned so much during the conversation, but this question for us it reveals the next layer. So Linda, you've done amazing work. You're an amazing individual. You can wake up and do anything, any day. But why is it that you chose the work that you do? What is your why?
What is my why? Well, I learned from one of my clients. She's from India, and she taught me this word, seva. I might be saying it wrong, SEVA. And she said, it is the honor and privilege of being in service. And I never was connected to that. I didn't I used to volunteer at hospice, but that's because I got to go to this ball and put on a fancy gown, right? But once I discovered who I am and really connected with who I am, this why is this is why I've been put on this earth, is to be of service and to be part of this healing that I believe that we are going through, and that is needed as individuals, because then it ripples to communities.
So Linda, if individuals want to get a hold of you, what is the best way? We will put your links in our show notes, but we want to give you that opportunity before we close today's conversation.
Okay, so the very best way to get a hold of me is there's a page on my website, lindabucher.com/contact-us. On that page, you can either book a call with me, like a complimentary 20-minute chat, clarity chat, or you can send me a note, goes right to my inbox. So if you would like to, share something with me, ask a question, whatever. So right on that page, you can do both. So that's one way. I will respond, right away. And usually within 1 to 2 business days tops, I will respond to anything coming into my inbox. If you go to lindabucher.com/chat with Linda, that's the quick way to just set up a chat. So that's what I would encourage people. Why go through email back and forth when we could just have a conversation, which is much better to me. So,
yeah. Linda, thank you. We've really enjoyed our conversation today. So again, thank you for being with us, and we'll post other information about you and your company in our show notes. Joseph, Laura, thank you. And join us for another episode of the Prime Life podcast. Follow us, like us, give us feedback. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.